This is live streamed. Yep. Mai ki tēnei hui. Welcome, councillors and poiwi. This is the public workshop. It is live streamed on the Kaunihere o Poneke YouTube page, and this is the pre-briefing progress report coming to the Koro Mātinitini Committee next week on the Tūpiki order strategy. No mai Andrea, me Karipa Wall, our two fantastic officers. Welcome Nathan, and I will just hand over to Karipa to get us going. Oh, and to acknowledge, given this is the first live stream session this week, just the events in Newtown and the fire and all the developments going on, including our staff and mayor and community that are out there helping assist the people from the Newtown fire.
Yeah, kia ora tātou, e rā mihi e rā, e tautoko ana. It's only right of me to support those mihi from the chair, so kia ora. Today, Tūpiki ora, just as a quick brief 101 before we give to the team. As you had your orientation last year, and we went through where Tūpiki ora is and what Tūpiki ora is aiming to achieve. So we're not going to go over too much of that again today, but to set a bit of a foundation, there's some of that kōrero in there for you. One of the objectives this year was to create a monitoring and evaluation framework so that we can make sure that we're actually progressing against that. One of the big things we heard as we went around for Tūpiki ora was that 150-osh years Māori have sort of been asking for some of these things, and so with the requests and aspirations that they presented us as we went around the community wasn't new in their minds, and so a big desire of ours in Wellington City Council was to make sure that we're actually monitoring our progress against this so that we don't repeat those kinds of sentiments as we go back out in 5 or 10 years and have more communications with conversations with the community. So that's a big one of part of this. The second is, as you move into the next phase of the long-term plan, how do you consider Tūpiki ora in that, and what are the aspirations and achievements that you want to make as you progress into the long-term plan? And so how can you use the data and the kōrero that the team have collated for you to inform some of that as you progress into those evidence-based decisions that you need to make? And the last, I think, in there is around Wellington City Council does so many amazing things for Māori. They do literally, and they've always done hundreds and hundreds of things for Māori to push forward for those outcomes that we're looking for. But what we need to start doing with some of those things is focusing them a bit more on a few areas and doing those few things a little bit deeper and a bit more impactful, so that we can actually see some really tangible outcomes for those as we go forward. So that's probably the overview of what we're going to look for today. And just got a bit of presentation, but most of the time today is for you to have a bit of a wānanga and a discussion with us about what those may look like and what those possible actions for you as we go forward are. Ka pai? Over to you, Andrea.
Kia ora ana, mihi Tirina, mihi Karipa. Morena tātou ko Andrea Brooking, tōku ingoa. We are presenting a paper to Koro Mātinitini, the Social, Cultural and Economic Committee, next Thursday. The paper is for your noting. It shares with you, as Karipa said, the monitoring and reporting framework for the 10-year Māori strategy Tūpiki ora and the key themes from our first progress report. So I'll take you through some slides today. Hope you don't mind, I'm just going to be predominantly reading from my notes rather than looking up at your beautiful faces. I know you've got back-to-back hui this morning, and so we very much want to keep you on time, and part of that I would like to be to the point. So as Karipa said, not included in the paper, but we'll touch on briefly today, is how you can support the continued efforts of Council to meet our collective aspirations. I'm going to whiz through slides 3 to 8 quite quickly, so they're just going to be a bit of a light touch reminder of what we've already built with our mana whenua partners, and just to help you understand where the monitoring and reporting framework fits in. We'll then discuss the key themes from our first progress report before taking a bit of a closer look at what the monitoring and reporting framework does and what you can expect to see in the future. And I think it's right with you, Councillor O'Neill. I'll just run through the slides and then open it up for questions at the end. So it's a bit of a timeline which shows us where we have come to today and where we're headed. Just a couple of points for clarification. April 2022, we talk about the Tākai Here agreement and where that's reset annually around Matariki Puanga time. It's not a reset of the whole agreement. The agreement is enduring. It's rather the priorities of mana whenua that accompany the Tākai. Exploring how we can co-design responses to environmental challenges. Our third waypoint, Te Whakapākiri Pūmanawa, building capability. This is another waypoint where our current initiatives span many of the actions, and a key focus for us is to continue to uplift our internal capability. And the final waypoint, He whānau toi ora, thriving in vibrant communities. This is an area more similar to the Taiao Environment Waypoint, which we need to look more closely at where our effort is invested. But again, we have some highly impactful initiatives, such as the Pōneke Promise. So here are the key themes from our first progress report. What we did was we asked every business unit or team to report every project or initiative that they felt was of relevance to Māori, that required engagement with mana whenua or improved our internal capability. We then retrospectively aligned that information to the Tūpiki Order Action Plan, bearing in mind that it had only been agreed 3 months prior. The key themes to be expected, given we are at the start of our journey. While we can report that there is a high volume of projects and initiatives that give consideration to our partnership with mana whenua, we can't tell you what specifically those projects or initiatives aim to achieve in terms of the benefits for Māori. That's something we need to look deeper into and would be a significant task given the current volume. So 2023-24 is our first year which commences with all of our foundations built. In particular, to commence the financial year using the Tūpiki Order Action Plan to reconsider how the current volume of projects and initiatives can be rationalised, more fully aligned with the action plan and more impactful, and hopefully alleviate some of the capacity issues and the engagement bottlenecks that we and our partners currently experience. So I'll talk a little bit more about the monitoring and reporting framework now. So that will commence from the 1st of July. And again, the purpose is to help us understand where we are on the journey and the impact our mahi has made for whānau and communities. The framework has been expanded to incorporate a complete view of all the elements relevant to good planning, such as the direction setting, which Tākai Here and Tūpiki Order provide, long-term and annual planning, processes and settings, monitoring, reporting, as well as the measurement of outcomes. The reporting will predominantly operate through existing council quarterly and annual reporting processes. That's to ensure the, administration of the strategy itself is not internally burdensome and is not taking away from the resources that deliver real impact. So councillors and the general public can expect to see progress through those products that you already receive, such as your quarterly reports. And as an FYI, the council have started featuring our key strategies through the quarterly reports, and you can expect Tūpiki Order, well, you might have got it yesterday actually, will feature in the Q3 report for this year, and you can expect to see the same results there as reported here. In addition, we'll do a deeper dive twice per year to just explore how those projects and initiatives are contributing to Māori outcomes in more detail. And each year in approximately April, we'll produce a combined reporting package that will come to you that will include the latest quarterly reporting information, the deeper dive, and also start to bring in some of the data to support outcomes-based reporting. So it's going to be a bit of a once-a-year show. Timing it around April is so that we have a lead-in into your kōrero and our kōrero with our partners about their expectations for the year ahead. Understanding our data needs, what data is available, and setting up those processes to routinely capture that data is what we are continuing to work on and is our focus now. Over the next month or two, we're hoping to work with mana whenua representatives to agree indicators to measure the progress of the priorities set out in the Tākaihiri agreement. They are closely aligned with Tūpiki order, so we expect that the data can be used to serve both. The outcome of those indicators to measure Tākaihiri is expected to be some form of dashboard reporting, which is more geared to our partners as the key recipients and audience. But as I said, this will also form part of the combined reporting package that will come to Council each year. In summary, Wellington City Council is exceptionally well placed to move forward with purpose and momentum thanks to the foundations it has built. Our first progress report reflects we are still at the start of our journey, and the data we seek to gather will support more meaningful input to our long-term and annual planning processes. So as a reminder, the paper that's coming to you next week will be for your noting, and we'll focus on that the reporting framework is now in place and the key themes from our first report and where we would like to go from there. Kia ora, I'm happy to hand it to you, Councillor O'Neill, for pātai.
Cool. Kia ora, tēnā koe, Andrea. Pātai, Councillor Wenera.
Joyce. Tēnā kōrua. Ai karere a mātou a mihi kua whakaatu mai i tēnei kaupapa. E rua ngā pātai. I suppose firstly, within our Tūpiki Ora strategy, I guess we're continually noting that deficiency might not be the right word, but that disconnect between our desire for engagement and also the capacity of our mana whenua partners. So I guess I just want to ensure that there is a concerted effort to uplift that, what's being done in terms of maybe secondment or paid consultation or that kind of thing. Kia ora.
Yeah, kia ora, Councillor. I think we've deliberately tried to build some capacity and capability and resource that as well, and you would have seen that through some of your recent amendments that enabled us to resource the iwi to do that. What we need to do in the future, I think, is lift some of these projects out of just individual projects and into a bit more of a system-wide kind of look at things, right? So in a similar way to how you're looking at the long-term plan, that's where we need to get with our partner governors, really.
Kapai, and then a follow-up, if I may. Is in this plan, is there a differential between, I guess, the interests or concerns or challenges facing Mātāwaka as opposed to mana whenua? Are we taking any different approaches to anything with regard to how we treat Māori who have maybe come to the city from other areas who don't whakapapa to our mana whenua iwi?
Yeah, the approach is, so both Māori from Mātāwaka and mana whenua Māori are included in Tūpiki Ora. There's no differentiating of this is for these ones and those are for those ones. Approaches would be fairly similar. I mean, what's good for one would be good for the others as well. But I think the difference we have in here is that we are partnering with mana whenua to be able to deliver those things to other people. So where there are, for instance, Māori language particular initiatives, we would partner with our mana whenua to ensure that their dialect and mita is out there in the community, but that's also empowering and enabling others from maybe other iwi to return and engage with their own mita and dialect as well.
Joyce, kapai, thank you.
Pauiwi hohaia.
Kia ora, thank you. I've got to say I'm very impressed with the overall kind of framing of it. It's really outcomes, performance measurement, that all makes good sense to me. I was interested in one comment that you made though around tiakina te taiao, one of the pai hekenga that you've got there, and the fact that it's probably the least aligned. And I appreciate it's still early days, we're still on the start of our journey, if you like, but are there any whakaaro, any thoughts around how we might more strongly align tiakina te taiao to our partner aspirations? Because I know mana whenua are really active in the taiao space.
Yeah, So there were, again, a lot of things going on across council that were of relevance and some assimilation to mana whenua goals in that space, but they just weren't specific enough in terms of their objectives. But likewise, some of the actions in our action plan do lack some specificity in terms of targets and goals. And so I think there is more kōrero to be had to be clearer in what we are seeking to achieve. That needs to happen between council and mana whenua to get more specificity in that space, and that will better help us as council align our work program accordingly.
Councillor Free.
Thank you, Andrea. It's really interesting. I'm just wondering if you could go back to the Te Kina Te Taio slide, because I just had a few questions about the measures. So I'm afraid I didn't really understand what is an initiative, what's an action. So
Sure. So the initiatives refer to all the current activity going on across council. So that's from our current work program.
okay.
The Tūpiki Order Action Plan has 9 actions focused on Te Taio. And of those 14 things that are going on across council, they align to 3 of those actions, which means there are 6 actions in the action plan where we can't see any evidence of how our current mahi aligns.
So I guess my question came with the big investments that we're making with, say, the sludge treatment plant and the water upgrades of water, so that we maybe don't get sewage overflows as much. Would they be things that get included in here? Because they're certainly where we're putting a lot of money.
Yes, they would, but there were a couple of business units that we didn't receive reporting from on time, and they are probably, Sarah, a couple of those big ticket items in there.
Okay. All right. So that does clear up a few things, because I know you mentioned Te Atakura, and I was thinking, yes, there's investment in there, but actually the really big picture investment, well, dollars, is in that water space. So yeah, it's interesting to know you didn't get that information. Maybe next time. Thanks, Andrea.
Just to add to that one, Councillor, remembering Tūpiki Order has a whole lot of actions, right? There's a plethora of actions within Tūpiki Order that is signing us up to really essentially a decade of doing some work. So we're not going to be able to achieve everything in the short time frame. Remembering the caveat that Andrea put on the top of this as well is that this is at the end of December, which is only 3 months after signing up to the action plan. So don't look at the numbers in kind of isolation to that bigger narrative that 3 out of 9 doesn't look so great, but actually that's 3 things that we not necessarily were doing 12 months ago, right? So we are doing some amazing things, and we are investing in rightfully so, things like sludge, things like waste, things like water. All of those things are being done at the moment with our partners, but we're still in the early investigating kind of stage of what that partnership looks like. Going back as well to the capability and capacity that our mana whenua hold at the moment, they've got to ask themselves, actually, what are the things that we can have an input into? And for instance, they might say sludge, they might say te atakura, but actually I can't be involved in the 300 kinds of things that the City Council's doing.
Deputy Mayor Fern.
Kia ora and a big mihi for the update. Just a couple of questions, and probably just following on, just one around our organisational culture, like how are our teams responding to these requests? That would be, and involvement and contribution.
Amazingly, we have an organisation that is really passionate and dedicated to making sure that we're putting the right foot forward with regards to our Māori outcomes. That's led by us, of course, led by some wonderful leaders in the organisation. who are really championing that kind of culture in the organisation. The thing we have to try and do with regards to our people is harness that energy and harness that wonderful passion and ensure that we're doing those things in the right way. An example that I've always used is when I came into the organisation, everybody wanted bilingual signage, everyone wanted Māori things every single year, but we didn't necessarily use the right tools to get those translations, and so some of the quality may not have come through, right? That doesn't mean our people don't want to do these things, though. So that's what we're doing. And of good news is in less than 7 days, we have a fully licensed translator coming into the organisation to help us with some work. So another good step in raising the quality of our language.
He me nui. Councillor Paul.
One more partai, but
All right,
no hurries.
we've got time.
I guess then the next, and I think actually as an organisation we're doing a good job of our narrative from what I can see, but yeah, what is the story and how will we elevate the story of this, our reporting in to the public?
Yeah, good question. Very good question, Councillor. I think what we need to focus on at the governance table here is around how, in partnership with our mana whenua, with our takahere partners, we're able to really align those strategic priorities and the things that we're doing at that kind of level. If we start to dig into the little bits and pieces that we're doing all around the organisation, then we leave ourselves a little bit vulnerable and open to, are we here? Are we doing these things together? Why are we not doing these things together? And so on and so on and so on. But actually, the bigger picture is that our relationship with our mana whenua partners is in a great space at the moment. You've got them at the table as well, making the decisions for the city with you. And our strategic priorities that we have currently, at least in our RTP, are strongly aligned to those priorities that Māori and mana whenua have put into Tūpiki Ora. And so how can you celebrate that success? Because it is flowing through. Some of these things that have been captured in Andrew's report here are just small snippets and examples of some of those things that you've been able to achieve in this short time frame.
That's useful, thankful. Thank you.
Councillor Paul.
Tēnā tātou, thank you for this awesome work. It's so exciting and it's really awesome to see what can flourish when you properly resource something. That's really important. And yeah, thank you for taking us along on this journey. I had 3 questions. My first one's about jobs for rangatahi Māori. I just wondered, is there anything going on in that space, or are there any organisations that we're supporting that are creating, meaningful job opportunities for young Māori?
Yeah, there's a couple of initiatives that are happening at the moment that we know about. Nathan, I was wondering if you wanted to talk about one of those.
Kia ora tātou. We're currently working on a multidisciplinary team inside of council looking at rangatahi pathways. So that's not just using our traditional methods of how do we identify rangatahi and bring them through probably some of our more traditional roles, like inside of PSR, Parks, Sport and Rec, but look at how do we utilise Tūpiki Ora to develop their capability in order for iwi to better be developed in the long term. So that's one. The other one is there's a Rangatahi Expo that's coming up soon.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Name.
And so we're working with Hatsari Apahat Poriroa to develop a combined effort on how we can support rangatahi Māori from around the region to get there and understand what their options are.
Cool, that's awesome. Yeah, send us a calendar invite so we can come along. My second partai is around Māori artists, in particular young Māori artists. So lots of my mates, they're musicians, they're artists, multi-medium disciplinary artists, and I think the big struggle for them is just the cost of living in this city, and but also having access to studio spaces and stuff like that. So I just wondered, are you guys involved in the reimagining toi pōneke work that's going on, and what kind of stuff can we do to support young Māori artists, or just Māori artists in general?
Bye.
Wonderfully, I'm also involved with that. We are at the early stages of that though. So we're looking at the development of the business case to support the different options that will come from all of our stakeholder engagement workshops that we will be holding. So we can't, I don't want to preempt that to say that we are going to go down a particular pathway or not, but that piece of work is definitely on the horizon.
And you guys are like involved?
Yeah, we have been from the start, and yeah, there's we sit at the governance table for that.
I think this is the beautiful opportunity that you have here as councillors, is to ensure that actually every kind of big opportunity that comes up, there's a chance in there to realise Tūpiki Ora. And so as we look to things like Te Ngākau and the big piece of work that needs to go in Te Ngākau, including Te Matapihi, how do we harness that, right? How do we harness this opportunity that we have with Toi Pōneke? How do we harness all of those kind of opportunities to be able to achieve these things, as opposed to individual projects just to achieve Tūpiki Ora? So that's definitely the approach that we're trying to take internally, and we're definitely harnessing on that wavelength. Where I guess the continued challenge can be for us is to make sure that as those things come through in the next kind of year, as you enter into the LTP, how do we continue that kind of sentiment and thinking, so that we're not just building a roundabout, actually, how do we also revitalise some language or some culture and some narratives through a roundabout, so on and so on and so on.
Mm-mm. I mean, and then just my last partai for this round. It was around place names, and like I know you're just talking about that before in your kōrero karepa, but I guess after going to the Kurereo, there was a session by, who's the other Smith? Not Ruth Smith, the other Smith, the kaiako?
Holly.
Yeah, from Holly's class about how we can give status to te reo, and like how countries that celebrate their indigenous language or just multiple languages, how they give status to that, and it's like by having it in signage and for place names and all that kind of stuff. So like, is there going to be some kind of organised bid around place names and correcting those or bringing them back where possible or anything like that?
I feel like you should just be part of my work program, because all of these things are mine. Yes, so there is, again, it's still early stages with it. Place names in particular, where we have control over those, even that control is interesting. There's a lot of different pieces within the machine that go into what happens with naming. Some which we have some control over, and others that we just don't. So we need to figure out what that looks like. Some of it we need to get our central government partners on board with some of the changes that could come into effect. So we are working on that. You are right. We see that as important, particularly through Tūpiki Ora. It is highlighted in there too.
Cool. Thank you.
Councillor Calvert.
Won't surprise you, but I'm quite interested just to see how we are. We talk generally, but I'm keen to understand how we are tracking against what we said we're going to do, in particular this year, and reporting. Are we spending the money? Are we not? Just where things are budget-wise, all that. Sort of stuff. So I know it's not quite the line of conversation that you've just been having, but really just what, are we achieving what we said we were going to do this year? And we do know that budgets going forward are going to be tight as well, so how that's been factoring in. But that might be coming out in the report next week, I don't know, but I'm keen to see
Yes.
some of that stuff.
So, Councillor, the report next week will definitely show you the progress we've made up to the reporting date. So you'll be able to see that. Again, that's in light of the fact that it was only September last year that we agreed to the action plan. So it's from that time until the reporting date. You will see the progress. With regards to, I think you're in reference to the LTP funding that we've allocated out into Māori outcomes in particular. Definitely that's on track, and we've spent a lot of that money on getting a lot of the foundation things in place. That's both the Tākai Here, in fact, that's the Tūpiki order as well, bringing that to life and into fruition. But lots of the things that you'll see inside the report, as an example, the Māori Language Week last year, Matariki also being the first public holiday last year, those kinds of things have been invested in with some of that money to bring things to fruition. Councillor Paul just talked about the kurereo as well, that was recently held, that I know the Mayor and others went to. Those things have been utilising that fund so that you can see the community outcomes being achieved through that. But the bigger thing that we've got as a council is actually wider than the LTP specific money for Māori outcomes. We've got a whole organisation that's got a budget of things and needs to do things in line with Tūpiki Ora and Tākai Here. So actually there's a bigger pool of money outside of that money that we're utilising to ensure. And so Toi Punaki is one of those, Te Matapihi is one of those. What the problem is, I think, is that we don't have a clear mechanism for capturing all of that spend. So if you ask the question of how much money do we actually spend on achieving Tūpiki Ora as a whole organisation, it's quite difficult to find, because you've got to go into every little project and work out exactly how much, for instance, Te Matapihi spends on that kind of thing.
And I suppose one of the things is I'm just conscious about not double counting either. You know, you can say, let's sludge minimisation, for an example, plant. It meets a number of aspirations, but we just need to be careful that we're not double counting our efforts and making us look really, really good when actually we're just doing what we should be doing. Yeah, so I just want to make sure that we're not going to, you can agree to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Next week's report that you will receive, actually you'll receive it today, only captures the actions that we have on Tūpiki Ora and the progress against those.
Councillor Randall.
Yes, I understand the dilemma. I've been working to try and get an understanding of, the expenditure estimates for the Frankitts Park, and there was quite a hold up to try and find exactly that information. So yes, it's not very well tracked inside the other parts of the organisation. So you have my sympathy. I too am interested in that side of things. My question is more around our iwi partners, because you made an interesting comment to Councillor Free around how they are, sort of overwhelmed in terms of being engaged, and not just by ourselves, but I'm sure the regional council, corporates. I mean, it's really a big theme in the city. But what I was wanting to know is a couple of questions. How do we know? How will we find out, given that they are making choices of what to be in and not to be involved in terms of their focus? How do we find out what they are really focusing on as a key stakeholder? Because in a sense, what they are interested in is partly should inform what we are interested in. And also the other part is, when they decide that a particular initiative is not, they haven't got the bandwidth to get engaged with that, how will we know that they're sort of, is it going to be a consistent thing that we will know that the iwi have been invited, but they have chosen that that's not a priority for them?
So in a simple way of looking at that question, Councillor, from a governance level, the iwi are fully involved in all of the governance decisions and processes that you make, and that's through the two governance seats that they hold here. So all of the decisions and all of the processes that you would go through as a council, they're entirely involved in all of that. They haven't opted out of any of those things at all. Where it comes to the capacity comment that I made earlier, that's more about the literal 400 plus projects that we have in the organisation. And so we might be, for instance, going through a project like Te Matapihi or Sludge or others that people have put forward, And at an operational level, that's at a day-to-day level where somebody's literally in the project team giving advice on how things might go and what things might look like and those kind of things. That's where we're giving the iwi the opportunity to be involved in those things or not in those things. An example of them being involved at those day-to-day is, again, the matapihi. They have people on the advisory groups at all of those different levels. They have mana whenua artists that are involved in there as well in the design. They have cultural experts giving advice into those kinds of things, the heritage advice, all of those. So they're fully involved in those. Something else like the street lamps, for instance, mana whenua have said, no, we don't need to be involved in that. You're all good. Go ahead. So how would you know those kind of things? It's not. There's not really a mechanism to let you know, but I think the thing you need to be aware of here is that all the governance decisions are entirely with mana whenua.
Cool. We've got Councillor Chung, and then I'll go on to people who've already asked questions.
Thanks very much for that. I'm just wondering, this full-time translator that we're getting, is that going to be a full-time position, and is there enough work for a full-time translator?
Correct, there is. So there's no added cost to that. We've budgeted that from the time of the LTP being through there. Our current data shows us that actually we would spend over that amount in the current method of contracting out our translation. So as an example, the website, the external facing website at the moment has approximately 30% of it translated into Te Reo Māori. That cost us in the tens of thousands to be able to do. That was a couple of years ago now, and we did seek some external funding to support us in that. But that, for instance, is just one example of the cost that would be to translate things.
Sorry, so from now on, with our own translator, here, does that mean that we would not need to contract out any of this work?
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Free.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I'm sorry, I should have done some homework on this. I'm still trying to understand exactly what we're seeing here. So again, just going back to the environmental one, I think you said there were 4. Yeah, if we can just look at it, because I know they're all similar, but I'm just trying to focus on this one to understand it. So I see the 9 actions. I've gone online to have a look. So which ones are the 3 that have been, that you were thinking are being, have made progress?
I don't think I have that information to hand at the moment. I'd have to come back to you on those ones.
I hope it will be in the report, because otherwise I just feel like, okay, there are 3 out of 9, but I don't know which 3, and I don't know how that success is measured. And I'm feeling that if I were the auditor, for example, because they can be very picky, we wouldn't have enough complete information here.
It's not in the paper to councillors. It is in our internal operational report in great detail, but it's not as an appendix to the current paper that's coming to council. Okay, because I can find that information out for
Councillor,
you.
I just want to remind us, though, that the action plan is for a long period of time.
Absolutely.
And so we won't be able to work, and this is to the point of the resourcing that we have currently. We won't be able to advance everything inside the action plan all at the same time, and in particular all from day one. So I wouldn't get hung up on the fact that we've only got 3 out of 9 in progress at the moment.
Yeah.
It's 3 are clearly defined and know what they're doing and have resources allocated to it of the 9, not that nothing's been done on the others.
No, and I do understand that, but I still think if we're reporting that 3 out of 9 have had progress, it'd be nice to know what the progress has been and where the, like the sludge plant isn't mentioned, but I actually see that there was meant to be a whānanga, a series of whānanga held about that sludge plant, and we did have the blessing the other day. So I assume that
Yeah, I think it's not going to be useful of our time today to
No.
dig into every little project that we have, but definitely that's the role of my team, is to be able to support the organisation to actually explore all of those things and look at how we are achieving all of those actions.
Yeah, but with due respect, we're being presented with this, and I just want to understand it better.
I
And,
think
yeah.
it's been well canvassed.
Yeah, no,
but
it has
thank you
been,
for
but I
your
haven't
concern.
really had the answers. Are we able to see that internal report so we can know what's been achieved and where we're going?
I think have a look at the report that we're presenting you next week, and we can walk you through those with some detailed conversations about what's in that report to help you understand that a bit. And
Yeah.
I think you'll get it a lot better. The
Sorry,
internals
yeah.
are not
Okay,
the right
but,
thing.
But the reason I'm persisting on this is if things haven't been done like the whananga on the sludge treatment plant and it was a funding issue or resource whananga, then we would need to know that because, like,
Councillor Free, I think
yeah.
with respect, let's wait till the papers come out this Thursday and we can set up more times for you to have in detailed korero about other projects. But yeah, as Karipa stated, sometimes we don't have to have visibility over every detail in the organisation. But just wait for the papers to come out and it might be able to ease some of your questions. Kia ora. I have no more pātai on the list. Kia ora koutou, Andrea and Nathan, thank you for your time today in Karipa. I just want to acknowledge the amount of work. It was a large priority of the last triennium and a massive undertaking to be able to get to this sort of space. So, yeah, thank you for coming in. Kia ora.
Kia ora,
And we will see
councillors.
you next week at the Koro Mātinitini meeting. Thank you.